Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into the 1904 St. Louis Olympic Marathon. And folks, let me tell you, this might be the single strangest, most chaotic sporting event in all of history. Seriously. And that quote, it just nails it. This isn't your typical story of athletic glory. Nope. We're talking about a surreal spectacle of human suffering and just plain absurdity that honestly feels more like a dark comedy than an Olympic event. So you have to be asking, how did things go so horribly wrong? Well, to really get the chaos that happened on the course, you first have to understand that this race was basically set up to fail from the get-go. The organizers created a perfect storm of terrible, terrible decisions. Just try to picture this for a second. It's a sweltering 90-degree day, super humid. You're trying to run a marathon on these rough, unpaved country roads. And as if that's not bad enough, there are cars driving alongside you, kicking up these thick, choking clouds of dust. And the final piece of this insane puzzle? The race organizer wanted to test a theory about purposeful dehydration, so he only allowed a single water station for the entire 25-mile race. Just one. Yeah, these weren't just uncomfortable conditions, they were downright deadly. One runner, a guy named William Garcia, was coughing up so much dust that it actually caused massive internal bleeding. He was found lying on the side of the road, and he was minutes from death. The race had barely even started, and it was already a life-or-death situation. Okay, so now let's meet some of the athletes, because the 32 competitors who lined up at the start were, well, they weren't exactly a who's who of the world's elite runners. It was one of the most wonderfully bizarre collections of people you could ever imagine for a race like this. First up, we have Félix Carvajal. This guy was a postman from Cuba who had lost all his money gambling on his way to the Olympics and had to literally hitchhike to St. Louis. He shows up at the starting line in his street clothes. We're talking a long-sleeve shirt, heavy wool pants, and dress shoes. Someone actually had to grab a pair of scissors and hack his pants into shorts right before the race started. And then you've got Len Tao and Jan Masciani. Now, these two men weren't even in St. Louis for the Olympics. They were part of an exhibit at the World's Fair that was happening at the same time. They just heard about a race, showed up, and decided to run it, barefoot. And to round out our cast of main characters, we have Fred Lorz. He was a local bricklayer from St. Louis, a total amateur who trained for this thing by running after his long shifts at work. Now, you're going to want to keep his name in mind because he is about to become infamous. So, you've got this wild cast of characters, you've got these brutal conditions, the starting gun fires, and as you can probably guess, things immediately spiral into absolute, unfiltered chaos. Let's check back in with our postman, Félix Carvajal. He was actually running a pretty good race, but he was starving, hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. So when he spots an apple orchard, he stops for a quick snack. Problem is, the apples were rotten. He gets these horrible stomach cramps, and what does he do? The logical thing, of course, he lies down on the side of the road and takes a nap. And the most amazing part of this whole story, he wakes up, starts running again, and still finishes in 4th place. Meanwhile, Len Tao, one of our barefoot runners from South Africa, was actually in the running for a medal. He was doing great, until he was chased for more than a mile off the course by a pack of aggressive stray dogs. I mean, can you imagine a 1-mile detour running for your life, and he still managed to come in 9th? Incredible. But the most unbelievable story from the day, hands down, belongs to our local bricklayer, Fred Lorz. Around mile 9, he gets some bad cramps and just decides, you know what, I'm done. So he just hops in a car, gets a ride for the next 11 miles. Then the car breaks down, but by then he's feeling pretty refreshed, so he just gets out and jogs the last few miles into the stadium. So he crosses the finish line first. The crowd is going absolutely nuts, and he's literally moments away from being awarded the gold medal by President Roosevelt's daughter, Alice. That's when an eyewitness yells out that he hadn't run the whole race. When he gets confronted, Lorz has the nerve to claim it was all just a joke. Yeah, the officials, they didn't think it was very funny. He was banned for life. So with the cheater out of the way, who actually won this thing? Well, the story of the real winner, an American named Thomas Hicks, is somehow even more horrifying than everything else we've just talked about. Okay, so by mile 10, Hicks was completely exhausted, totally spent. His trainers decided they needed to help him out. So first, they gave him a mix of raw egg whites and strychnine. When that wasn't enough, they gave him another dose, but this time with a big swig of brandy.
By the end of the race, he was pale, he was barely conscious, and he was hallucinating. For the entire final mile, his trainers were literally carrying him, holding him up while his legs just kind of shuffled uselessly underneath him.
Now, let's be crystal clear about what was happening here. The so-called performance-enhancing drug that was used to keep the winning runner on his feet was, quite literally, rat poison. Sure, it acts as a stimulant in very small doses, but it's incredibly deadly.
The second his trainers dragged him across that finish line, he collapsed. He lost 8 pounds during the race. Doctors rushed over to him and later said that if he'd been given just one more dose of that strychnine, he would have died right there on the track. It took 4 doctors over an hour just to get him stable enough to leave the stadium.
So let's try to wrap our heads around this absolute mess. Looking at the final results just puts a perfect, bizarre little bow on this whole crazy event. Just look at these numbers. 32 men started this grueling race, only 14 actually managed to finish it. That's an attrition rate of over 55%. The course and the conditions, they just absolutely destroyed the field of runners. And this right here, this is a final record for the history books. The gold medal went to a guy who was actively being poisoned and had to be carried to victory. The guy who crossed the line first was kicked out for catching a ride in a car. 4th place went to the fella who took a nap after eating rotten apples. And a top 10 finish was secured by a man who had to outrun a pack of wild dogs. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. And all of this leaves us with one final thought. It's really easy to look back on this whole event and just laugh at how completely absurd it all was. But you know, it's also a pretty sobering look at a time before we understood anything about hydration or nutrition or athlete safety. In a very strange way, this carnival of errors is probably the ultimate testament to how much progress we've made. It really shows you that razor-thin line between athletic achievement and mortal danger.